So may I request Mr. Pradeep Udhas to please take over the session? Thank you.
Thank you. Is this working?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This session is in a way, when you look at the overall program for Mindmine Summit, that I'd worked closely with Chaturvedi and Sunilji. It seems like an odd one out because you've talked about such broader issues like the economy, the social issues, politics, and then now we are talking about technology. So I was discussing with my panel members. I said, well, how do we make it relevant for this audience and for the conference? So we decided that we will not, talk about specific gadgets and technology, how it's evolving, because that I think is a pretty much common knowledge now. But we will focus more on how the technology will, is impacting or is for India, and what is it doing? Is it really working? With all the promises. When we were, I was many years ago in IBM, and I remember. Of course, Intel introduced its first processor way back in 1971, and it had a 740 kilohertz kind of speed. Of course, I joined IBM later, and of course, then also it had not really, it had kind of scaled up, but now Intel has introduced a processor which is 4 million times faster. So you can imagine in 4 decades, that is 4 million times faster. So yes, technology, is kind of really transformed many things. Now, when we see how does it apply, we've talked enough about how, mobile commerce, etc., is reaching out to people. There are incidences like in Africa, where there is some product called ASP, where it on your you can get your bank account on your really reaching out to poor people who cannot afford have access to bank. You can have a bank account in your mobile, and there are examples like that. In India also, I remember when you hear about e-Chopal or how it's helping the farmers. So it's always I feel that as Indians, sometimes we create there's a big euphoria that gets created, and then now if we were to ask saying how many e-Chopals are there in the country, how many farmers are really able to manage the farming outputs, looking at e-Chopal, is it really so? One is, are we as a country very good in marketing something? Maybe we think of a business model, we hype it up, but we are not able to scale it up. We are not able to execute well. When so that's one of the things that I think that's a question that I wanted to raise for panel members also. Is what do you think? Is that these technological advancements are coming? Are they really reaching out to people, or are we a country, as one of colleagues here was saying, are we a country of what is a proof of concept, POCs, proof of concept, where we come up, other people take that and scale it up, but we're really not able to do it. So what's your view?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a very valid question what you asked, saying that really technology, we will not talk about gadgets and stuff like that, what's making an impact in the world, but really the technology, can it make a difference to this country, different to the people? The glowing example is the often talked about telecom, and where I have had some personal experience, and Jai is sitting here, is the same question was asked in 2004 when the very major deal was signed with Bharti, and then 2005, 2006, press used to ask me saying that, is it one-off deal? Is it like the POC, what you talked about, or is it going to be making an impact? And Bharti took this, I remember, and Jay can correct me later on, it was close to 2 million subscribers or so at the time. Even in the construct what IBM put together, without going into details, in the next so many years, we put a certain number. We have way blown past that number. And the number of subscribers that I have covered by that technology model have gone beyond hundreds of millions of subscribers. And it's not only that what it has done, it has made a huge impact on the country. As far as I'm concerned, that was the starting point of technology, what it can do to change this country. It bridged the digital divide. It took the technology. It came out with business models which from the prepaid card model, which took to the rural areas, the drivers and maid servants and street vendors could use it. They were brought into the technology revolution. So I would say in India we can do that. Particularly in India, there are so many low-hanging fruits. Technology can bring this and make a huge impact, and the needle will move if we apply to the appropriate area. That's what I would say.
So Jay, do you think, I know that from a voice point of view, but some of the uses of that technology, the infrastructure is there, so voice people are using it. Do you think people are going to start using it really for the other things which will improve their productivity, lives, etc.?
First off, clearly the impact of technology is only if relevance meets affordability. And we've been able to, as an industry and as a country, experience voice where relevance has met affordability. And so we've been able to go deep into India and so on and so forth on voice. Clearly today, our sector, our industry is all about data and internet, more so about mobile internet. So with the mobile platform, we are really at the early stages. We're beginning to see with the rollout of 3G and 4G, we're going to get few megabits per second, maybe a little bit more, coming to various devices. And what's interesting is one has to, again, redefine relevance and affordability. If you go back to those two fundamentals, now relevance in this mobile internet world starts with something as simple as money, Airtel Money, which is really commerce. So I think you were referring to it. It's conversion of physical commerce, physical economy to digital economy. We have, for example, rolled out mobile commerce or mobile money, not only in India, but in other 14 countries in Africa. So we've got about 10 million users of it across 15 countries. I'm just using that as an example to say, how do you take 10 million to a 250 million? When you, for example, in voice, we've been able to inch towards 250 million users. Can we inch mobile commerce and mobile money towards a 250 million users? The short answer is yes, the technology is there. The business models are there. Another example is cloud services. How telcos are playing important role in offering cloud services to small and medium businesses. That's where IT meets telecom. And that's an offering that is beginning to take off in the world. Another very, very relevant example is health and security. These are extremely relevant, and even education. So in this new world where you switch from voice to data, we're going to start seeing applications of the mobile internet in areas such as commerce, in areas such as security, health, education, so on and so forth, whereby there will be relevance that meets affordability. And underlying all that, you do have continuous technology evolution. And I don't mean just the 3G and 4G variety, but I also mean the IT variety, wherein servers and storage and clouds and devices, they all start accelerating extremely rapidly. I'll just simply conclude by saying, to get relevance and affordability to meet each other, it requires an ecosystem of continuous innovation, whereby companies co-opt partnership models with win-win business model relationships, and we open it up to ecosystem of innovators that can go way deep into crowdsourcing, into various parts of the country or even the globe to bring in new applications of technology to the table. So relevance meets affordability backed by innovative ecosystems. The short answer is India clearly is way beyond POCs in this particular domain. Voice is proven, data has just started. It clearly is not going to be just a POC.
How about you, Sanket?
Yeah, so I would say I agree with many of the comments in terms of saying technology has been a huge enabler over the last decade for India. I don't think anyone would doubt that, and I absolutely agree. I think it's been the revolution of voice. And I would say it is exactly right. Data is to come. The digital economy is still yet to come, and the dream is still alive, I think is the way I would describe it. But I think there's, and I think there's more, there is a ton of opportunity, but I'd also like to categorize some of those opportunities maybe slightly differently. I think there's one major opportunity where I would call the group of individuals probably at the 18 to 30-year-old already digital natives. And they actually represent a digital economy, a thriving digital economy today. The way, and those individuals who are there, and you can take a look at all the set of numbers in terms of the number of connected devices they own, the number of smartphones they own. They switch their smartphone every 4 to 6 months. Their connections to Facebook or Twitter or the different applications. These people live in the digital economy, and when you think about the kind of opportunities for them in India, the kind of things that they're going to do to drive the digital economy, whether that be creating businesses and applications for India, in India and for India, and how that will continue to drive the sets of things that need to happen here, I think is a huge opportunity and something we shouldn't completely pass over, because it is something that's absolutely happening. I mean, if you just take a look at the numbers, the smartphone market in India has gone from 12 million, it'll cross 22 million this year. Next year, it'll be 40 to 50 million. India will go from the 50th country worldwide 2 years ago to the 4th country in the world worldwide in terms of number of smartphones sold. And that's primarily being driven by an age group that's younger than 30. And then when you think about that in terms of the set of internet users and the kind of things that they're doing on internet and what they're doing on e-commerce and the kind of things that they're doing with those kind of technologies, it's really driven by that group. And so I think there's an entire ecosystem that's totally in the world today from a digital economy perspective, and I think that can be a big engine for continued growth in India. But then I don't think I certainly want to forget there's a significantly large group and population in India that has been certainly revolutionized by voice, but is still waiting for that next wave of data. And I think Jay's point on making sure that relevance meets affordability is exactly right. Have we cracked that code? I don't think the answer is yes to that. I think there are a lot of really good ideas in terms of how we want to do it and what we need to do, whether those be in banking, whether it be in entertainment, whether it be in agriculture. All those things are possible. And one of the things I know from a Microsoft perspective we've been doing, and we just did this a couple weeks ago, we hosted an App Fest with the state of Maharashtra, where we did a 24-hour app-a-thon, basically, to build apps for social good. And it was very interesting to see the set of individuals that came to that event in terms of thinking about how do they build applications for solving accessibility issues? How do we build applications for helping solve water issues for farmers? And then deploying those on very simple devices so that those things can become more meaningful to that larger group of people that haven't yet been truly impacted by what I would call the next generation of the data revolution. So I think that's where the dream is still alive.
So you said, the age group of 18 to 30, we've become number 4th in the world in terms of number of smartphones, but partly it's also a factor of, India being such a huge country in population that, if there is even that one sliver, that gets active, we are suddenly on top of the world. So yesterday, Shashi Tharoor was here, and he's saying that he talked about how we are going to have, I think, about 250 million people in that age group, would be working, and are we going to? So, how many of those are actually having smartphones? I mean, or to be able to leverage some of these apps, etc. I mean, so how do we push it? I mean, I know you said some we can prepare for a smaller devices, etc. But as a nation, you think it's government's role? You think it's corporations' role to really see that that large part of that population benefits from this?
So I think there's two dimensions to it. Number one, I think there's a piece which just sort of says, hey, I think the world will move there, and everyone will have to be familiar with the set of devices, so they will be able to do their work on a daily basis. They'll be able to get their jobs done. They'll be able to find what they need to do. They'll have to work at home easily, get their services executed. All those things are going to become very familiar, and I think those are just table stakes. And I know from a Microsoft perspective, we're trying to help to make sure that we touch all of those students. So for example, we did an agreement with MHRD last April, and we provided internet mail communications services and productivity services for all 9 million higher ed students, STEM students in India. And we're providing the training for all those students to say, here's the things that you're going to need. It's the basic technology skills to get up and running and how you'll have to operate in the world today and tomorrow, which I think is one piece. Then there's the second piece, which I think is something that I think is important as well, saying how do you use technology to enable new industries that don't exist? And I think at the best that we can do is to provide a platform for those young individuals with great ideas to figure out how to solve those problems. If we give them the piece parts, almost, the Lego pieces, and say, here, figure it out. You determine what problem you're going to solve. You determine how you're going to make this work. I mean, it's just interesting. I'll just give you the example. We did this App Fest for Social Good, and we had one person working on accessibility, and we had another group working on a bus routing app, which was basically if you're in Mumbai and you're sitting on a bus, the GPS would tell you when your stop was coming up. And it would tell you before you got there, so you didn't have to pay attention. You could fall asleep and maybe it would ring you. But it was interesting, these two people connected and said, wow, wait a second, this could help a blind person. Because the blind person doesn't know where the bus is. And they just had an interesting conversation in the sideline and turned the app completely differently. And now you start thinking about, okay, now I can enable someone who is vision impaired to work in a city like Mumbai, which is a very interesting concept, right, in terms of what, and no one could have come up with that idea, but it is these two people in Pune at 11 p.m. at night decided that was a great idea. And I think it's that just creating that platform for those ideas to flourish is exactly what I think we can do.
I'll give you a simple example. I think we are talking about behavior development. How do we create a behavior that will use and embrace innovative technologies? I'll give you the simplest example that India has innovated, called missed call. Imagine the number of missed calls all of us get used to, because somebody places a missed call because he doesn't want to pay for it, but the other person knows I've just called. That's a behavior that got innovated in our country. Look at prepaid. Similarly, in the data and internet world, I totally agree with what Sanket's saying. We're going to start seeing some very innovative uses of the mobile internet, which our country, our people, various segments of the population are going to naturally start creating and innovating as apps such as the one you're saying start really percolating throughout. So what is the next missed call that Indians innovate? That's a very simple, and can you imagine how powerful missed call is? It didn't come from the Western world. We created it. So that's a simple example.
So can we have the monitors a little louder?
Yeah,
some of the conversations, we're not able to hear each other so much. Maybe they can hear. So monitors, who is the sound person? Where's the sound? Because we are not able to hear each other, so because the monitors may not be low, maybe low.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not very clear, so.
The sound person is.
So let me add to what technology can do, and then what to Jay's point on data side of 2 points very quickly I'll make. I hope you are able to hear.
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
No, we don't need. I'm just saying, if the monitor, if you can raise
not the mic,
sound,
it's the
not the mic. It's the monitor which we can hear on the stage. Those speakers, if you can raise the volume, we should be fine.
So one was the India Research Labs, we're not very far from this hotel, and the teams worked on a research project called Spoken Web. What happens here is that it has nothing to do with the capabilities of an individual who can work on a computer or the computer literacy, but it is about, if I'm a plumber, if I'm able to speak on a landline or a cell phone and then say what my capabilities or what I want to do on a site called Voice Site, and these voice sites are linked through voice links, and then we have proved, again, through some demonstrations here, that business can be transacted. It's like a www, but using voices. That is one project which has been done, which is going through a couple of areas, one in Karnataka government in employability platform area. The second thing is we tried with agriculture. third is in telco. We are looking at that. The second point, to the importance of data and what India can do, you would see that yesterday when Nandan was here, he was talking about the interactions with Tom Friedman, 2004, 2005, and the book on World is Flat book came. But if you really, 8 years from now, if you look at it, I would say the world is become smarter. Because if you see, everything which you can't imagine is getting instrumented. It is not only your cars, it is the river water beds, it is everything it's getting instrumented, and they are also interconnected. So the amount of data that is getting transferred and the intelligence is being applied to this is amazing. So I would term by saying that data has become the new oil, is a new natural resource for the world. And India is now in a fantastic position because of its talent and the ecosystem. Of course, we got to build the ecosystem to take advantage of this new oil called data. And if we can get insights into, you can say, are you talking computer? No. Talking about healthcare. I'm talking about public security. I'm talking about government. I'm talking about education. And you can look at financial services industry. Any industry, the amount of data that is getting generated, and if you can get insights into it, you can get competitive advantage, you can get better protection to the citizens, and so on. So my theme would be, India is a great advantage to leverage this new resource called data.
Yeah, thanks. And also, if you think the data is a great resource, it may also be giving sleepless nights to some politicians also, because with the RIT, etc., some of the data, if it all gets computerized and it's accessible, available, then you can't wait for weeks and months to provide that. That's something else that technology has done really, is from a social awakening point of view. I've been told I have now limited time and would like to open up the floor for questions for the panel.
Hi, I'm Deep Kapuria, Chairman of High Tech Gears. While what you've said is right, that this opportunity of technology and innovation is creating huge opportunities and connectivity within the social networking plus. There's also a risk, I think, which needs to be addressed. That the overdependence is what we just saw, that there was a cyber attack in parts of Europe and everything literally coming down to a standstill. So is there also a way forward in terms of how this is getting addressed and de-risking and making it more robust and more dependable, so that such type of risks are not... I mean, today in a connected world, there are many such fiction stories which will bring the whole world to its knees. On the other end, while it's creating an environment for great businesses, for even an entrepreneur, it's also creating certain monopolies. And let me give you an example. Today, a high-end car which is operated by a lot of the ECUs are now cannot be serviced unless the OE really wants it to get done. You can't even change a battery in a A6 or a A8 till that Audi allows you to do it. So what is now coming up is certain legislations like right to repair for a car. So a lot of that also, I think, needs a perspective needs to be brought in, which I think was getting missed out in the discussion. Could you look at that as well?
So you have two parts to it. So the first one is on the whole security issue and the data security and privacy, etc. So maybe from a telecom perspective, Jay, if you can cover that.
First of all, I must acknowledge it's a very, very relevant point. When we are working in industries that are governed by certain regulations and and lawful constructs, there are certain frameworks that we can put around that industry in terms of services that we offer. So I'll give you a real example. Cloud services.
True.
When we offer cloud services from a non-telco, conditions of lawful intercept don't apply. But when we as a telco offer cloud services, lawful intercept is a condition that we must comply with. Obviously, since we have launched cloud services in the small and medium businesses, that is something we have complied with. Therefore, you see, there has been a regulatory framework and a lawful framework around it that, when applied to a particular industry, has provided a solution for safeguards and maker checker and so on and so forth. So therefore, the fundamental question is a policy question. What are the policies that can be enforced? More importantly, what can be designed and what can be enforced in a multi-industry setting, especially as you transcend boundaries from one industry to the other? Can technology support those policies? The short answer is yes. Technology can always be tweaked, programmed to support those policies. But it comes down to policies that need to be brought to the table to ensure that things don't go out of control. And that's sort of what you were implying in your question. Do we reach a stage where things could go out of the control, could go out of human control? And I think that's a very relevant question. And as our industries evolve, I think that policy framework around multi-industry cooperation and how we actually operate across the board is going to be a very, very relevant one. Finally, I think the right to repair are examples where human control versus machine control is something that would have to be decided depending on that particular industry or the particular usage. We may see cyclical behavior there. We may see cyclical behavior where we see it going a certain way and then the pendulum swinging back the other way. I think the planet is here to learn as we move along those directions. There isn't really one simple answer. In a nutshell, I'd simply say policies and cyclical behavior is something that will allow us to iterate and get to the final answer. Of course, there will always be technology smarts to provide cyber threat and so on and so forth. It will never be 100% correct, and there will always be a risk in anything that we do. But it has to be guided by some railroads to allow the trains to move forward.
Thanks. And Sunilji has a mic, so I don't know whether he wants to ask a question or end the session. So.
No, it's a question. I had a chance to visit the tech center both for Microsoft and for IBM some years ago, and we were just talking about this a little bit earlier. There's some really interesting futuristic things in these tech centers: driverless cars, refrigerator ordering any food which falls short automatically directly. Things like you stand in front of the mirror, it tells you how you would look in each part of the clothes that are in your wardrobe. Which one of these do you think might actually become a reality in the foreseeable future? And what do you think are the craziest things that technology might do for us?
Okay. The tech center was IBM.
Go ahead, after you.
Yeah. So I think there's certainly a few areas that we're investing in that we think are the next generations. And I think I would say there are two critical things. One is natural user interface, and then the second one is what I would call work on your behalf. Natural user interface is the idea that says you want a device that interacts with you based on how you want to interact with it. And the simple scenario of that is if I have something that's 4 to 7 inches, I want to touch it. I probably want to talk to it. I probably don't want to wave to it, right? I don't want to do something like that. If I have something that's a little bigger, I might want to touch it. I might want a keyboard or a mouse. I may want it to interact with me in a different way. I may not want to talk to it. If I have a wall, I might want to do all sorts of different things. And so the whole idea is to say now, because the power of the devices is in such a way, you can start to interact with it in a much more natural way. And so I think when you start thinking about that, in addition to new display technologies that get into very thin displays, clear displays, I think what we're going to start to see is devices everywhere and the ability to interact with those devices be seamless. So I think that's sort of one part of the next generation of the technologies. I think the second thing is where we get to act on your behalf, and I think that's also going to be the cool set of things that happen next. So act on your behalf is really for the ability of the machine to take a contextual view of where your current status is today, and then start to take an action based on a new incident that happens. Something new, a new piece of information comes in, and then the machine takes an action. Like a very simple one that we can do today, we have a product called Link where you can speak through your computer and be on a conference call. And if I put my PowerPoint into presentation mode, it turns my status into do not disturb. And if anyone calls me, it doesn't ring, it goes straight to voicemail. It doesn't even ring my mobile phone. It just shuts everything down. So the machine knows I'm presenting, I don't want to be bothered. And so it starts to do things on your behalf. And I think there's some very interesting things that say, okay, my plane is 30 minutes late, I don't need to get an SMS on that. It tells my computer in the cloud that that's happened. It's already called my driver and sent him an SMS, see, come 10 minutes later and pick me up. All those kind of things are not that far away, and I think those will be the things that we'll start to see in a very, very short time frame.
I'll add a simple one. Keep it short and so you can have a chance as well. I'm not going to go into holographs and our persona sitting somewhere else. Augmented reality. Augmented reality is something that is just around the corner. And I don't mean glasses and the Google Glass and stuff like that. I mean something as simple as you taking your device, pointing it to something. There's a camera here. It looks at that and gets all the metadata from the internet. And you get all the metadata that you want. Now you can apply to any screen. It could be the visor or the helmet. It could be a refrigerator. It could be anywhere. I really think augmented reality is around the corner, especially with so much of connectivity that's coming in. And there's some very cool applications that are emerging. You point a photo to a magazine cover, the model out there comes to life and you see the video of the model walking right on your screen. So I think that's just around the corner.
What I'm going to say is not as cool as what Jay talking about a model walking, but this is bigger. This is much bigger than, this is the thing called Watson. IBM came out with this computer called Watson, which really won in US, a game called Jeopardy, where the answers are given and you really have to find out the best question. And this computer beat the world champions. And it really, what happens is it's constantly reprogramming itself, and it is cognitive systems. And these systems are now going to play a huge role in healthcare, particularly in cancer treatment, in various other treatments related to healthcare, national protection, border security, and also in financial fraud. So this is huge. It's no longer computing and tabulating and computing. It's cognitive. It's constantly reprogramming with interaction with data and interaction with human beings. And it can do a huge role in healthcare as I see it as a first big one. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. I think I've run out of time.
There's one question there, maybe.
Can I take this question? Okay, yeah.
My name is Nikhil Kochar. Yesterday we had Mr. Nandan Nilekani telling us about the UID and the Aadhaar project. He was also talking about creating a database of about 500 million people within the next 1 year. He also spoke about an application economy which is going to come up on the basis of Aadhaar. So since your companies are high-end technology companies, would you like to share with us as to what kind of applications you are perhaps facilitating which could help people at the bottom end of the pyramid?
One area I think it's related to data and data matching. I was in another conference last afternoon talking about really the voters list, how the duplication is avoided, and they talked about how IBM has done it in US. Exactly the same that can be applied here in the humongous data what UID will connect. Data veracity and the trust on the data can be a big area where IBM can play a role.
We clearly are trying to push relevant applications in the agriculture, animal husbandry, wherein our farmers can get live information. They can get prices of vegetables and other produce in real time so that they're able to avoid the middleman, so to speak, and sell it at the right price. And also with Airtel Money, mobile commerce, actual payments for things like NREGA and stuff like that happening directly through the mobile channel. So I agree, there's a lot that's going to happen at the bottom of the pyramid. And finally, because of APIs, you're going to see tight linkages between industries and things like UID AI. For example, the same APIs can be invoked from within an application to check the identity of the individual relative to a UID AI database. So those are some simple examples.
Yeah, and I would just add, we're working directly with UIDI on
Yeah.
building those applications. We're focusing on, at the end level in the village or the panchayat, and saying, what can we enable someone who has a multifunction device to be able to support those transactions? So it wouldn't be just how to take and move the benefits from the central government directly to the end citizen, but how can we also help facilitate technology solutions for that last person to create a business based on that? So we're talking about how do we automate things for them? How do we give them accounting services? How do we help them do adjacent services, whether it be loans or whether it be it could be a variety of different things. It could be associated to agriculture. It could be selling information. All sorts of different things that can then be provided on a device that actually creates a local economy for those at those endpoints. So I think there's lots of interesting things that are happening there.
Thank you. And KPMG, we are managing all these programs, so for your idea. No, thank you very much. I appreciate Jay and Shankar for a very interesting session. I hope you guys liked it too. And we'll close the session. Thank you.
Let the applause be a little louder for our panelists here. May I request Sunil Kanji to come up and give away mementos to each of our participants in this session on technology, starting with Mr. Shankar Annaswamy. Thank you very much. And Mr. Sanket Akerkar. Thank you for being here and being part of this Mindmine Summit. Dr. J. Menon. And Mr. Pradeep Udhas for also moderating our session. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It'll just take about a minute and a half to reset the stage for our last session. So just bear with us for just a couple of minutes. Thank you.